with Twitter. Our group is basically 5 people. It's actually a larger group, considering. So we've been meeting a couple times, and we've gone through quite a process to try and narrow down our actual topic. It's still in a series of refinement, actually, because things are changing so quickly on the U.S. presidential debate that it's been quite difficult for us to figure out how to use the data, to therefore find a meaningful correlation or story behind such a large set of data and a complicated story behind it. So we have chosen the U.S. presidential election. What we're going to try and do is take a look at the data. We've scraped about 75,000 tweets so far that are centered around the presidential debate, the first one. So we're going to do the same thing for the second and third debates as well, and try and look at whether social media can actually be a predictor of the election itself. So, well, that's kind of what we discussed doing. We can see if it's actually possible. But one thing that we thought about doing, is monitoring Twitter opinion by state and see if it actually differs from the traditional mapping of a red and blue state. So if you have, I was going to pull up a couple sites, but there's no easy access to internet. But traditionally, mapping to the US, you'll see that there are red and blue states and swing states. The Twitter population is a subset of the population. It's going to be younger, a subset of the registered electorate. So you can actually see whether the concentration on social media and Twitter is justified by the campaigns, in whether Twitter can actually be a translation to whether people go to the polls or not, or whether it's simply a discussion platform. So that's one of the things that we thought about doing. One of the interesting things about this particular election debate is that obviously social media hasn't been around for that long. I mean, Twitter's only 6 years old. So Twitter has become a much larger driver of obviously how these candidates campaign themselves. So what we've been looking at is that this presidential debate, I read on the Nieman Journalism Lab at Harvard, that it was actually the most heavily tweeted US political event ever, which doesn't say that much since it's only 6 years old, but still somewhat significant. So, but one of the discussions that was had on the New York Times and this Harvard Journalism Lab is whether Twitter actually undermines the political debate or not. So the role that Twitter plays within these campaigns is a rather interesting and ever-evolving one. So what we're going to try and do is take that rather amorphous conversation and argument and try and just see whether shifting opinions around these presidential debates mirrors what a Gallup poll says or what a traditional poll says when monitoring the rest of the population. So like I said, what we've done so far is taken a bunch of keywords, including like Barack Obama, obvious ones like Barack Obama, Mitt Romney, let me get to my list. Romney Ryan 2012, Republicans, Democrats, Democratic National Convention, National Republican Convention, Republicans, et cetera, et cetera. And we've come up with about 75,000 tweets that then Bibu and the rest of the team has been looking at a couple of different tools to actually analyze this data, break it down, try to figure out, okay, what is a positive and what is a negative tweet? That's a very difficult thing, and he'll go into that a little bit more when we actually take you through the tool. So we're right now in the analysis phase and trying to see whether our story will actually hold up when we analyze the data, and see whether it's actually possible to derive that simply from the information that's available to us. So, I mean, we won't be able to prove it, obviously, until the election actually happens. So we'll be taking this data, analyzing it through the first, second, and third debates, and then we'll see, whether Romney wins or whether Obama wins. And that might actually, I mean, it may not be a correlation of Twitter, but it may also be an interesting conversation to have, okay, how much does social media actually translate to the real world? There are some, Huffington Post recently just did a brief analysis saying that actually Twitter and social media trends are indicating that Romney will win. Whereas traditional media, like Gallup polls, Real, Electoral Politics, these other very trusted sites, show Obama still winning by a large margin. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of results we come up with. But
So as Christine said, the idea of how the visualization would look like at the end of when the final presentation would be like, it would be centered around 3 debates, which we would be having. So the first one just went by last week. So we haven't yet analyzed it because we are yet formatting it, because that's a lot of tweets. I think 10 million 90 minutes. So I don't think we would ever be able to do that, but still what we're trying to do is put a structure to these tweets. And so as the following debates come, so what we're trying to do is take 3 dates, that is the day prior, the day of the debate, and the day later, to see how the trend is. And the idea is to see how the opinions or how the sentiments are shifting throughout these debates or around these dates. So we came across this tool which we think might help us, but this is a very basic tool. It is based on Power Pivot, and I would recommend if you have huge chunks of data to, if you are a fan of using pivot tables, Power Pivot actually is like pivot on steroids, is what they say. And so this is what it looks like. So this is how it should look like. It says that I could not get the previous dates of tweets. So so this is just for today morning. So when I ran the tool, so this is just for today morning. But this is how it should look like. So this graph shows you the number of tweets which came by between 22nd of May and 26th of May. And it also tells us what time of the day was used, the tweets came by, the top hashtags, the top mentions, the tone. So we'll go to the tone. Here is where we'll try to put these tones into these states. So what we are trying to visualize is having having the map of United States and having these 64 plus states in it, and also color them, code them based on what sentiments they have for each of these candidates. So so this is what I pulled today morning, and we just had about 90 tweets in total, and this tells me who are the people who are tweeting. It also tells me who are the top positive tweeters and the top negative tweeters. So what I intend to do is, all these tweets also contain the geo-coordinates. So what we'll try to do is find where these are coming from and then probably put that into a map. So this also tells me the top mentions. So within each tweets, what are the hashtags or the handles used. And so this is the tone. So the words, based on the words used within these tweets. So positive, negative, and for each of the handles used. So for Barack Obama, it says sorry, not here. Yeah. So okay, we can probably exclude election 2012, but here you can see Barack Obama has slightly positive sentiment, had positive sentiment today morning compared to Mitt Romney. So this is just a basic tool which we will try to build in more, and so also we have to add geo-coordinates to show where are these tweets coming from. So there's a lot to do. So this is probably the basic tool.
How does this positive negative thing work?
So how it works is, so there is this ranking which is given. So what it does is, what the table does is, based on the ranking given to each of these positive negative words within these tweets, it ranks the tweets.
So it's not foolproof, obviously, there's still
Yeah.
going to be a margin of error,
So
but that's something you can do.
So we need to have more positive and negative words.
What about the word not? Word not in front of
So Alan knows that there are complex algorithms which are used, but I don't think we have that expertise in the group, so we'll go with something basic as this. But there is algorithms, very complex formula-written algorithms as to what if. So something like
Once we have
not bad.
set up ready, they can plug in complex algorithms to do sentimental analysis.
So something like a comment says that was not, the debate, not bad. So how do you, it is a positive comment, but
Especially for something like politics, not just not and things, there will be use of irony, there's the use of all kinds of pragmatic things, right? So somebody might say, oh, Obama did great in the debate, right, with an exclamation.
Yes.
And you know that he did it. So I mean,
yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge actually, is trying to actually just, because without going through manually, you're not going to know for sure.
you
So
could,
there's,
you could run a script that sort of removes those from your sample. So instead of trying to analyze them, just get that aren't straightforward. You know, what would be really interesting is to take a look at this and then contrast that with the Gallup or other polls, or the Iowa futures market.
yeah, that's what we talked about doing
Yeah.
this morning.
so
Recently, there was another survey which did the Gallup and other surveys. Everybody said that Romney won the first debate, but according to the tweets, it said that though Romney won the election, but he did not win hearts. They were like he was very rude. His negative sentiments towards him was actually outweighed the positive.
Well, that is where, I mean, if you especially look at the battleground states, if you look at Ohio, Florida, it might be really interesting to find out whether the negatives, I mean, really, Romney's big problem is negatives, it's not positives, right? So if there are lots of negatives in those locations, it might be worth doing.
And you also found other project, I'm sure there's other projects like this going on. It's all public.
There are. I mean, it's a very popular topic, but what is interesting is there's not a lot of blogs are doing kind of like micro type projects. So it's actually something that could be thrown on a blog, and it would be quite useful because there's not actually a lot of data visualization going on because there's not the major, at least U.S. outlets aren't putting a lot of time to actually modeling Twitter or social media.
Universities, courses like this,
Sure. Yeah. Of
No,
course.
but that's
It's
what's,
still
in
interesting.
fact, one of the things to do is not just for them, but for all the groups is now to write your blog piece with what you have so far and we'll put it up. Right? Because obviously, so it would be fun to say, well, can you predict Washington from Bangalore?
and that was one of the points,
Ah.
but we thought complex to, or at least. So what we wanted to know is what is the rest of the world thinking about this, and are they trying to influence, or is there influence, or
It's too meta.
Yeah. We were trying to break it down.
Okay.
One other thing that may be interesting to just look at how words spreads on So somebody reads something and afterwards somebody repeats that. So certain reads have what the broad statement that I'm picking up. The question to look at is what is the distribution velocity of reads. So, for example, if this is not quite like the actual, just to give an example, there's an XKCD comment that calculated what distance you have to be from an earthquake for the reads about the earthquake to reach you before the earthquake actually is. So, similarly, there are certain messages that tend to get retweeted faster, certain messages that tend to get retweeted more, and certain users whose messages tend to get retweeted faster. So, is there a pattern among those? Are there certain topics? Or the key question, I guess, is is the topic significantly more important than the person that sends the message? That would be one interesting question. I'm sure there are many other related questions. So really looking at the time. So given at what time, at what point